We all know that angels and demons don't get along. To form an alliance between these two races, they decided to marry our protagonist to his declared enemy. And to spice things up a bit more, every time they fight, a ring placed on their finger makes her get excited, let's say, if you know what I mean. Our protagonist, being a stinky otaku, is going to use this mechanism to try and take advantage of her. This story is simply magnificent, and since the video is free, the only thing I ask is that you give back by leaving a like and a comment. With that done, let's get into the story. The story begins a few days ago when our dear John was still venturing into the world of humans. He was a stinky otaku demon in love with 2D girls. Don't even start cursing him here in the comments, because I know you are also one of those who prefers an anime waifu over a real-life girl. I don't judge you either, because I'm one of those too. Shameless John used to read R18 magazines, and the guy was ticking off the full checklist of a smelly otaku with issues. While he was enjoying life here on Earth, he sees a girl falling from the top of a tree. That was quite unexpected, and she lands right on top of the poor guy. He, being a badass hero, puts himself at risk to save this beautiful girl's life. He thinks she's really pretty, but he's a cautious guy, and tries not to get too involved with her since he could be accused of something shady. She's super hot, really beautiful. The only thing John does is take the girl to eat, since he was scared she might sue him. Go figure, right? In today's world, when you do something good, you still end up as the guilty one. John can't stop staring at the redhead, and she only seemed to care about the food. She ends up saying thanks. This crazy girl was resting up in the tree and ended up falling asleep, guys. That's why she fell on top of him. Realizing the redhead was kinda nuts, he decided to sneak away without paying the bill because she had eaten everything in the restaurant. Very cleverly, she intercepts him and says her name is Sophie. He doesn't want much chit-chat and tries to end the conversation with the redhead quickly, because he knows he's gonna get stuck with the bill. She leaves even faster, and yeah, he ends up stuck with the bill. Guys, he's forced to pay for the food she ate. Get a grip, get an ID, go look for a job. Later, he goes to talk to the angel's secretary who handled his passport for the human world. He said he was late for the report because a girl had fallen on top of him. Not to mention, he didn't have enough money to pay the restaurant, so he had to leave his action figure as collateral. Since he's a guy who doesn't work, the woman doesn't really believe in our hero, and the poor guy is left begging, apologizing. He does this because he was afraid she'd take away his passport to the human world. He didn't want to lose access to our world since he was a stinky otaku. In the demon world, there were no anime, no manga. The angel's secretary keeps saying that bribery wouldn't be impossible, hinting that he'd have to tip her to keep the visa active. Later, we see that this secretary, who is also a supervisor, gets a call for a new mission, and she says she's going to accept it. The mission in question is to get an angel and a demon married, and she already had 2 lovebirds in mind. So you already know things are going to start going wrong, or rather, things are going to start going right for our protagonist, since he's going to stop being that stinky otaku who doesn't shower. For sure, this guy doesn't even shower, and probably sleeps with his little figurines. I don't doubt it, I'm not bi, okay? I'm 100% straight. Later, he ends up running into Sophia again. When he goes up to her to confront her for running out of the restaurant and leaving him with the bill, the girl lands a karate move on the poor guy. He ends up all busted up on the ground, and the girl asks who he is and if by any chance he's a scumbag. He says he came after her to get the money back. At that moment, an organization of angels and demons starts hunting both of them down. To your surprise, or not, they wanted to marry John and Sophia, and neither of the 2 protagonists knew anything about it. They start running like crazy. However, in the middle of the escape, she ends up jumping off a railing and crashes into our hero. She gets really frustrated because she didn't like him from the start, since that type of guy was exactly the kind she hated most. And so, the 2 of them bump heads mid-air, falling together into a pile of trash bags. With that, the organization ends up catching both of them. They wake up a little while later, and the supervisor keeps saying that Sophie is super cute. Sophie was desperate, asking where the hell she had ended up. And our hero was already awake for a while, calling her an idiot. The girl runs off to try to punch John, but he managed to dodge at the last second. She was so strong that she destroyed the couch. If he had taken that hit, he definitely wouldn't be here to tell the story. She keeps saying he's a jerk who is trying to take advantage of her. The secretary apparently didn't know the 2 already knew each other. She's surprised to find out that John's story about the girl who fell from the tree was actually true. That way, the supervisor starts explaining to both of them what kind of mess they were getting into. Sophia had just turned 18, and now she was supposed to be John's future wife. When he hears that, he starts freaking out, guys. He asks why he would have to marry an angel. "Oh, but I'm not gonna marry that loser over there," says Sophie. "Besides everything, he's ugly and barely had money to pay for my dinner at the restaurant. Saggy pants, a man with no car, no own house. I bet you don't even have a driver's license. And on top of that, you're a bus driver? Tough. There was no way John could defend himself since he really was poor. And the only money he had spent on figurines. So they declare mortal hatred for each other and keep saying they would never work out together. They were pre-selected by a message the supervisor sent in a committee group of angels and demons. Whoever didn't respond to the message would be considered pre-selected for the marriage program. Our hero didn't reply because he had no internet, since he was poor and had no phone plan. Sophia, on the other hand, who was an angel, didn't reply because she thought it was spam and deleted it to save memory on her phone. The supervisor starts laughing, saying everything was going according to plan. However, John keeps saying he would never marry a crazy girl like her. The secretary interrupts, saying it was time for them to change clothes because the wedding was going to happen. They can't believe what they're hearing, but that's exactly what happens. John is taken by force, already wearing his little suit and even screaming a lot. He can't do anything. Sophia is dressed in a wedding dress by force and is also taken there. Our dear John falls head over heels when he sees Sophie, because he was just playing hard to get, but deep down he liked her. Someone shows up next to him and starts saying he'd never get a pretty girl like Sophie, and that's why he should appreciate her. So, the secretary says she's going to officiate the wedding between the two. She says all the vows, and they both try to run away, but without success. When it's time to confirm they accept the marriage, the agents grab the microphone and answer in their place. They do the same for both, and so they were officially agreeing to this marital bond. The agents forced the rings on them, and that way they were married. And don't try to fool us, John. We know you want to marry her, yes. So they end up forcing a kiss between the two, in a scene that's quite romantic and funny. All of a sudden, John, who's a demon, and Sophie, who's an angel, are married. All this so the two races can prove they can get along. The secretary explains, already in their house, that they're going to receive support from the company. This marriage will have a minimum duration of 1 year. If they prove that the two races don't match, they can get a divorce. He gets downhearted, since his first kiss was with a girl he hated. Sophie keeps saying she's going to rip off that ring and cancel this crappy marriage. But to everyone's surprise, the secretary explains that those rings are magical. If they try to remove them to cancel the contract, the ring will explode and they will die. John said he didn't agree to any contract. However, at the moment they kissed, they were admitting they were married. Now they'll have to live as a couple and prove these two races can live well together. They can't believe this is their new life. Sophia even starts cursing, saying she ruined all the beautiful life she had ahead of her. She gets desperate, saying she's now married to a loser and won't even be able to buy food for herself. However, John realizes there are several benefits in this marriage contract. He's going to receive for 1 year a generous allowance from the company, so he'll be able to buy lots of things. On top of that, he'll be next to a beautiful girl. However, the angel here starts turning into a demon. She makes threats, saying if he touches her, he's going to die. You remember I said every time they fought, she got excited? So guys, at that moment she starts fighting him, and the power of the ring ends up causing a spicy sensation in Sophie. She even falls to the floor trying to control herself, but it was too strong. He starts to get excited, but he wasn't really understanding what was going on. The secretary on the other end of the line explains that every time they fight, the ring activates a desire for reproduction in both of them. Another part of the contract is that they really wanted the two to have children, to see which race would prevail. You already understood what the premise will be from here on out, right guys? So pay attention, because this story is really good. Sophie starts telling him that she's ready, and he curses, saying, "Ready for what, damn it?" Besides being a stinky otaku, he was also a big coward. Is that really it, guys? He ends up picking her up like a true bold Sigma. She starts screaming, asking, "What the hell are you doing?" He kicks the door open and starts taking her somewhere. That makes Sophie scream a lot. And when she least expects it, he drops her under the shower, so the cold water would fall on the girl and put out her flame. He was an honorable guy, and wasn't going to do anything with her if she wasn't in full control of her instincts. She thanks him, saying he's not as disgusting a guy as she thought. Deep down, she feels a bit sad, because she thought he didn't see her as attractive enough. Actually, she thought she was thinking it, but ended up saying it out loud. In response, John says her ope eyes aren't that big of a deal, but the rest was passable. However, he resisted because he didn't want to have kids. Having kids would be a huge expense, and that would get in the way of his manga and action figure purchases. The guy only thought about buying figurines and manga, and he knows very well how to spend his own money, guys. I have to admit it, Sophia gets mad because he makes her feel like she's not that attractive, and the girl ends up kicking the wall, breaking everything. The next day, as soon as she releases her wings to fly around the apartment, he grabs her by the waist. He says she can't let humans see the wings, because they don't know about the existence of angels and demons. Later, after she takes a shower, they sit down to talk. He He says they need to make an agreement. He keeps staring at her after she gets out of the shower, and she ends up kicking him in the face, telling him not to stare too much. Our hero here is quite shameless and says that if she gets too worked up, the ring will activate again. With that, she ends up letting him go. John starts to say what the agreement will be, mentioning that he also didn't want to be married to her. She quickly cuts our protagonist off, saying she's suffering even more because she's married to a repulsive being. John says he's going to overlook what she just said and hopes she can accept this marriage. Sophie didn't want to accept this at all. John says there are many positive points because they're going to make a lot of money. He really was a broke guy, and just thinking about the possibility of having some extra cash already made him super happy. He even says that with all these advantages, by the end of the period, that they might even fall in love with each other, and keeps asking her if she would accept this agreement. That makes Sophie extremely furious. She goes at him, trying to intimidate him, saying that never, ever in her life, under any circumstances, would she fall in love with a stinky demon like him. She says that if he tries to brainwash her in any way, he's screwed. And so, they accept the agreement and try their best to get along. That's why, later that same day, she agrees to walk instead of flying around. She still wasn't very familiar with the human world, but John already knew a lot, since he'd lived there for a while. As soon as they go downtown, he gets more intentions, saying she's really pretty, but that he won't forgive her for always humiliating him, and that on the next attempt, he's going to make her pay for everything she's already done to him. They had scheduled to meet with the secretary at a college to sign some papers. However, the supervisor had forgotten to mention to John that Sophie was terrible with directions. She really needed help getting to places. We see that she really got lost and ended up in a completely distant place. She was like Zorro from One Piece, guys, always getting lost. Later that night, the magic ring emits a signal, and they try to understand what the ring was saying. The ring starts telling them to sleep spooning. Would you have the courage to sleep in my all torn up bed? I don't. Nonsense. No need to laugh, woman. I'm a poor guy. No need to laugh. When they hear that, they already get pretty pissed and start yelling, calling the secretary. As soon as she answers, she apologizes and says the ring will issue some missions. If they don't complete the missions, the ring will explode. The next mission that shows up is for the two to hold hands for 5 minutes. Sophie is thankful because the first mission seemed way harder. In this case, spooning. John preferred that first mission, but just holding her hand was already good enough. The girl starts making fun of John, saying he wouldn't have the guts to hold her hand. She says she's very pretty, so he'd get nervous, and even calls the poor guy a little innocent baby. She even gives some evil laughs, those anime girl laughs, all that just to mess with John. But he's no fool, and doesn't fall for her provocation. He reaches out his hand and says he's not going to feel anything weird. As soon as they touch hands, she asks him not to squeeze too hard. When I saw that stinky otaku shirt of his, I admit I laughed a lot. Who here on the channel has anime shirts? Comment to see if Rico Manhwa has real otaku. They keep holding hands, and our hero says he wasn't feeling anything strange. But just by looking at the expression she was making, that little pout, you could already tell she was. The shameless one even starts laughing at her facial expression. But honestly, she looked really cute. Little by little, he starts getting nervous too. In John's airhead, he thinks that if he feels anything while holding her hand, it'll show he's a weak man. So he hides it as much as he can. While he's about to explode with emotion, he slaps his own face, saying she's just an angel and that he shouldn't fall for her. But seeing the girl's face up close, she's really cute and also very pretty. I don't know if I'll be able to resist. When he sees her eyes all shiny and embarrassed, the phone rings, telling them to cross fingers and hold hands for 1 more minute. They start complaining, cursing that extra mission. That felt way too intimate, and they keep avoiding it. But even so, they do the next step and intertwine their fingers. They even look the other way, trying not to lose control. Time passes and they complete the mission. All that had been really hard, but Sophie keeps saying it was no trouble at all completing that mission and that they could send harder ones. Our protag was in shock and she keeps teasing him, saying the boy there is a little crybaby and innocent. Over at the secretary's house, she was hearing everything and cracking up with laughter. If you're enjoying this story, go ahead and leave a like if you haven't yet, and also comment part 2, because that way there's a better chance I'll bring the continuation. Marriage is a wonderful thing, where two lovers form a family and do everything together. They also share happiness, pain, and help each other out. Not to mention they do some fun little things. You know what I mean. At least that's how it's supposed to be. But here, in this case, reality is completely different. Sophie would leave the room a total mess, and that really pissed John off. He opens the girl's bedroom door and starts yelling at her to clean up all that mess. It's already breakfast time. It's almost noon, you idiot. Oh, then it's already lunchtime. He starts cursing, saying all she thinks about is food and that her room smells like fart. John finds some padding and doesn't quite understand what that was for. The girl comes running and snatches it from his hand, all angry, and once again I crack up at those otaku shirts of his. If anyone there can tell which anime this one in the picture is from, comment it for us, because you'll be doing humanity a great service. That makes Sophia really embarrassed, because she had small boobs and needed those pieces of clothing. She kicks him, launching the guy out of the room. It had been a few days since she did laundry, so she goes all grumpy to the machine to put the dirty clothes in. She keeps mumbling like an old man who complains about everything. Meanwhile, our dear John was all happy, because he was looking at the bank app and saw that he had about $2,800. He even said that now he was rich and wanted to buy all his nerdy stuff. But then he starts hearing a noise in the laundry room and goes to see what was going on. The girl had put 300,000 kilos of clothes in the machine and couldn't close it. Pretty angry, John asked what the hell she was doing, and she says the machine was broken because it didn't want to close the lid. Poor John runs to see if the appliance wasn't broken, and even complains that he hadn't finished paying the installments yet. "I'm hungry." Is that all you know how to say? All you do is ask for food? If you're hungry, go and make something to eat. She didn't like hearing that very much, but ends up going to the kitchen. The girl noticed John's fridge was full of food, and she had an insatiable hunger. The secretary warns, there in the emergency, that John should not under any circumstances let Sophie do anything in the kitchen, because she was very dangerous. As soon as he finishes hearing that information, the girl is already there with the big knife, slamming the table and destroying everything. She's pretty innocent and has no idea how strong she is. At that moment, John realizes how hard it would be to deal with this girl, and he understands why demons are always afraid of being crushed by angels. Little John kneels down and starts begging her to let him cook her food and wash her clothes. He knew that if she kept destroying the entire house, he'd end up with the biggest loss. He even puts on a totally defeated face, begging to do everything for her. She looks a bit suspicious but ends up agreeing. In the end, he had spent almost his entire allowance just to fix the item Sophia had destroyed. The poor guy even cries, because now there wouldn't be any money left to buy his figures. His name is John, and currently he's trapped in a forced marriage by the angels and demons community. He shares his apartment with a little angel named Sophie, and she's not ugly at all, and in fact she's very pretty. However, that ring they were wearing forced the two of them to complete some missions, and also caused a certain excitement, let's say, every time they argued. To provoke Sophie, he ends up eating the pudding she was tasting, and so she charges at him, trying to end his race. But since he's no fool, he shows the ring, and says that if she happens to hit him, that animation feature will activate. She stops the blow at the last second and realizes he was playing dirty. And as a good villain he is, our dear hero keeps messing with her, saying she won't be able to fight back. He teases Sophia in several compromising ways, saying she was very pretty. That leaves her super embarrassed. When she tries to attack him, stomping on his face, he shows the ring again and says that the one who will suffer the consequences will be her. The poor girl was in trouble with this shameless John. After a whole day of him annoying her, she can't take it anymore and goes to the park to let out all her anger. The secretary says he was playing dirty, and that was to be expected from a demon, but she thought it was nice to see them going through situations like that. She then hugs the girl and says there's a tactic she can use. The secretary is going to give her own ideas as an excuse. So keep watching to see the story end in a beautiful way, I promise you. After receiving the tips from the secretary, their ring ends up beeping, and our hero would have to take her to the amusement park to have fun over the weekend. Look at this sleazy guy's pillow. This dude right here is a shameless 10 out of 10. Sophia, on the other hand, sleeps all sprawled out on the bed and even drools all over. Since they couldn't refuse the mission, they end up going to the amusement park together. But our hero wasn't excited at all, since he was terrified of those rides. It was Sophia's first time at an amusement park, and she got super excited. She even said she was going to take a lot of pictures. John noticed she's really cute and starts not hating her so much. However, he's surprised because he never imagined that a girl like her had never been to an amusement park. She said she was going to run to the rides, but ends up going the wrong way. Goes straight toward the exit. He starts mocking her, saying she's very innocent and silly. The girl had no sense of direction at all, so John ends up putting those little kid bracelets on her so she wouldn't get lost. She complains, saying she's not a little baby and that she's not going to wear something like that because it's too humiliating. Listen here, you idiot. You already made us waste a lot of time this morning since you ran off, got lost, and I had to look for you for over 20 minutes. So stop being dramatic and just put on this bracelet without complaining. After getting a scolding like that, she says she wants to go on the roller coaster. She says that because she knows he's afraid of thrill rides, and she wants to do everything she can to provoke him. However, the ring gives instructions that he must agree to go on the rides with her. With not much choice, he ends up spending the day pretty traumatized since he hates that kind of scary ride. Besides that, it caused John a huge feeling of discomfort. All of that was amazing for Sophie, but on the other hand, John was suffering a lot. He had childhood trauma and didn't like rides like that. By the end of the morning, he was totally drained, but because she was cute, he no longer felt that same hate and irritation as before. To be honest, he was even confused about the feelings he had for her. With every smile Sophia gave, his cheeks turned red, and little by little our hero was falling in love, folks. However, a few hours later he was worn out and feeling really sick. The girl brings a little juice for him to drink, saying it's going to be great and he's going to feel better. She thanks him for the hard work he did all day, and acknowledges that he tried really hard to make her happy. Actually, he did everything because he was forced to, right? But, okay. She even keeps saying that this day was very nice and happy. However, that made him a little annoyed. John was thinking that the girl was messing with him, since she had been acting cute all day, and that wasn't common at all coming from her. So, she ends up asking when their next date is going to be, since she was really enjoying it. Since their relationship couldn't progress that quickly, the scriptwriter of this little world had to come up with an excuse for them to fight, of course, and our hero gets mad, saying that she's fake and only trying to make him fall in love with her. He says she spent the whole day trying to be nice to him, and that wasn't normal coming from an angel like her. Actually, John believes that Sophia was just trying to trick him. The girl gets a bit anxious since she didn't even notice she was being nice to him. While he starts complaining even more, the girl kicks John in the face, knocking the boy unconscious on the park floor. It was all too good to be true, folks. And so, they keep walking around the park because there were still a few hours left before it closed. The supervisor shows up dressed in a costume and says they're doing a great job. The supervisor appears everywhere, and she also worked at the park. She says they should have fun in the haunted house. John gets a little scared and starts making excuses, saying that no haunted house could scare him because he was a demon. He even says the secretary was talking to the nightmare incarnate itself. He even said there was no point putting him in those scary rooms because those childish tricks would never work on him. Sophie immediately notices he was making excuses and starts mocking, saying he's a coward. The secretary gives the order, saying they can't refuse to go in the haunted house. Our hero ends up dragging her along just to prove he wasn't a scaredy cat. The supervisor keeps provoking, saying that if he refuses, it'll prove he's a scared demon. She already makes a bet with him. If he doesn't get scared, he'll win a bonus to buy his manga. But if he loses, he'll have to pay for a 1-year streaming subscription for her. He accepts the challenge. The supervisor hands over a phone and tells Sophie to go to another room, while John should enter through the door next to it. He enters all confident, saying childish tricks wouldn't scare him. As soon as he enters the room, he already gets uneasy, because the phone starts ringing. The place seemed pretty ordinary, it wasn't the scary type. When he opens the phone, there's a message saying, "Sorry." Sophia appears behind him without making a sound, and he's trying to figure out what that message was. When he looks back, he realizes the girl was coming towards him, ready to attack. And so, John lets out a high-pitched, squeaky scream. John had lost the bet. Sophie was laughing in his face, with a fake knife in her hand. The secretary takes a picture of our hero's crybaby face, but in the end turned into a scared little kitten. Sophie keeps looking at the wall full of names of people who got scared in that haunted room. Our hero keeps staring at her, saying she looked really pretty in those colors and that they matched her well. The secretary tells our hero that he's already starting to like Sophie, and that was exactly the goal, to prove that angels and demons could get along. John says he doesn't like her at all and that he was just observing how she looks like an idiot. The supervisor starts teasing, saying he should just admit already that he likes Sophie. He denies it with all his might, saying he hates the girl. He even said that she has a nice body, but her personality is terrible. At that moment, she ends up hearing everything and catches him red-handed. She gives him a few knocks on the head and says she's going to finish enjoying the park, since there were still a few minutes left. As soon as they finish walking around, their mission is completed, and the ring congratulates them. He could finally go home and get back to reading his manga. However, Sophia had found a child who got separated from her mother. When John sees the Digimon plush, he keeps asking where that little girl bought that plushie. Sophie slaps him on the head, saying he shouldn't worry about that kind of thing and that they should help the little girl. Our hero said that wasn't his problem. He pulled a Peter Parker move here, folks. Sophie says he's a monster for not wanting to help a poor defenseless child. The little girl even starts apologizing, telling the uncles not to fight, and so he says he's leaving and won't help with anything. Sophie keeps cursing, saying all demons are the same and that they have no empathy at all. She says it was foolish to expect anything good from him. With that, John takes off the bracelet and tells her to do whatever she wants. Sarcastically, he apologizes for being stubborn and heartless, and wishes the little angel to good luck. So, Sophie holds the child's hand and goes to look for her mother, while complaining about her new wife. He hears over the speakers Sophie saying that a little girl was lost, and that she would be waiting in the lobby. Our hero hears a woman telling someone that her daughter was lost, and she was desperately looking for the little girl. We see that Sophie still hadn't managed to find the girl's mother. The little girl keeps trying to cheer up Aunt Sophie, saying that her mom is going to look for her in that place because it was the spot they agreed on in case they got lost. The redhead says the girl is very well behaved and congratulates her. However, Sophie was more lost than a blind person in a shootout. She wasn't going to be able to get home since she was terrible with directions and her phone was out of battery. She even keeps saying she was too naive and that she shouldn't have mistreated John, and admits she depends on him. She keeps remembering the time she said demons were useless beings, and even feels remorse for saying that. Right after our hero ends up arriving and Sophia asks what he came there for. The girl's mother was with John, and they end up reuniting. The mother scolds the little girl, telling her not to go running around alone. Sophia asks how he found the girl's mother. He explains that he heard her looking for her daughter, so he brought her to the sound room since he knew Sophie was there. The girl is amazed that our hero helped someone, since she thought demons had no empathy. He even says that he couldn't have left Sophia alone because she wouldn't know how to get home, and that the little angel should think more before acting. The redhead gets a bit embarrassed and admits she was wrong. She only admits it because she's not a human woman, since, according to him, women never admit when they're wrong. And that's a joke, girls! Don't take it seriously. Later, the little girl's mother thanks them for helping, and they end up saying goodbye. On the way out, John says he needs to go home already, since he can't stand being away from his bed and his couch anymore. Sophie starts following him and begins to think that John isn't such a bad guy after all. She wanted to say something to him, but got too shy and ended up backing off. The cutie realizes she's starting to like John, and ends up giving herself a few slaps on the cheeks to wake up and stop dreaming. He decides to apologize, saying he went overboard and shouldn't have said those bad things to her. In response, John says she doesn't need to apologize for anything, since demons are exactly as she described. They're from different races than angels, and the worldviews they have are very different. The girl ends up pulling John's arm, telling him to stop being grumpy, and that she doesn't like seeing him like that. He yells, saying that she's way too close. In response, the girl says that now they're married. She says he's acting like a tsundere. John replies that she's the one who's a tsundere. And for those who don't know, tsundere is that type of person who's angry and cute at the same time, and acts kinda bipolar. That typical anime character you stinky otakus love. And don't even try to deny it, because I know that very well. She said she doesn't hate him and that she just started to realize that now. Then she ends up tripping and leans on top of our hero. That typical scene that you know has to happen, it's mandatory. And so they end up rolling down the hill. When they stop down on the ground, she ends up kissing John on the forehead. I'm sure she did that on purpose, but she gets all embarrassed, pretending it was an accident. He keeps asking what that was just now, and she acts all innocent. The impact is so strong it sinks him into the ground. The next day, while walking, he asks where she got money to buy those juices. She said she didn't buy them because she saw a video on the internet and just replicated the technique. The cutie decides to show him how she did it and ends up finding a juice machine. She gives it a strong kick, and just like that, a bunch of juices and candies fall out. That was exactly the technique she saw on TV. The police officers watch everything and go over to confront them. Our hero keeps telling them not to worry because she had mental problems, and he would pay for the items from the machine, apologizing. They sit in a plaza, and he explains to her that she can't do that because it's considered theft. She asks where his fear of roller coasters came from. He says that when he was a kid, he was watching Detective Conan, and in the first episode there's an accident on a roller coaster. From then on, he had psychological trauma and didn't like rides that involved intense emotions. At that moment, upon hearing that, she already starts plotting some mischievous plans to mess with him. When he was a tiny little snotty kid, he got a DVD of romantic series. From then on, he started getting interested in the human world, and, after that, never let it go. His favorite genre became romance, and anything scary made him very afraid. Basically, he was a scaredy cat demon. And that's hard to imagine, right folks? Sophie was an 18-year-old angel, and had gotten married due to some very unusual circumstances. Her husband's name was John. He was 19 years old and a stinky otaku who cried while watching romance anime. She said he was an insolent worm for crying over those silly little things. Another thing John did that she didn't like at all was looking under the doll's skirts. After all, that was the closest he'd ever get to a girl. Another trait of John was getting mad at messes, and messes were Sophia's specialty. That's why she always found herself wondering if he was a normal person. But in the end, John wasn't a bad person, and she was even starting to like him. When she was about to go to the kitchen, he ends up blocking her, saying she was forbidden from going in there. That happened because of the incident from a few days ago, which you remember well. He tells Sophie that he's going to make lunch for her and starts cooking using his masterclass culinary skills. He was a very skilled chef and made incredibly delicious dishes. At first, Sophia refused to eat because she believed his food couldn't be good since he was a demon. However, after trying it for the first time, she realized the taste was divine, and she kept asking how he managed to make such delicious dishes. Our hero explains that he learned to cook the hard way because he wanted to spend his money only on action figures and manga, but he also didn't want to starve to death, and he realized that buying ready-made food was very expensive. The most effective way to save money was cooking on his own, so he started buying his own ingredients and preparing everything. During the explanation, Sophie kept asking him to repeat, and we see that she ate a lot. The girl's hunger was practically insatiable. After a few days living with him, she already felt the difference on the scale. Yeah, guys, the little angel here already had her belly popping out of her pants. Later, she ends up going out for a walk and gets lost. Even following the GPS, she can't find her way home. She gets angry because she was stubborn and went out alone and starts cursing at the phone. She decides to walk aimlessly to try to find her way back home, and when she least expects it, she ends up finding some bullies robbing a poor boy. She keeps staring at those delinquents, and we already know that it's going to get messy. Our hero is excited because he managed to buy a limited edition Mayon figure. This one is a top-tier greasy nerd. He had gone out to buy some ingredients for dinner, and at that moment sees a boy being thrown out of an alley. He already senses that something fishy is going on, and his ring starts beeping loudly. When the ring beeped, it meant trouble was coming, and he tries to ignore that alley. However, the ring wouldn't stop beeping. To the left, no beep. To the right, beep. To the left, no beep. To the right, beep? Well, then I must go to the right, of course. But the ring starts dragging our hero to the left, right to the place where the trouble was happening. With not many options, he ends up getting there, and we see that Sophie had beaten up all the bullies. They say she's really strong, and in response, she says they were the ones who started the fight. Sophie is a true badass Sigma, folks, and had beaten up all the bullies. One of the gang leaders ends up showing up and says the boys are weak for getting beaten up by a simple little girl. He starts juggling a knife there. And when Sophie sees that, she gets enchanted, thinking it's super cool. Nobody understood why the girl was acting that way, and she said the leader's skills were amazing. With that, he starts showing off, performing all the tricks he knows. She gets fascinated and starts asking him to teach her how to do that. Everyone thinks the girl is very cute and wonders if, by any chance, she's an angel. That way, she says they should stop doing bad things to others because that's not nice. At that moment, our hero ends up flying in uncontrollably because of that ring and crashes into the criminal. They fall to the ground and he keeps complaining, saying Sophie always causes trouble for him to deal with. That way, he realizes he was in big trouble in the middle of a gang. And once again, John asks Sophie what she was doing in the middle of these dangerous people. She starts thinking that now she has a better chance of beating the bad guys, because John is by her side, and he must be strong since he's a demon. However, John was there apologizing for his friend and saying she's crazy in the head. The guy didn't want any trouble in the human world, he just wanted to live his nerd life. The gangsters start threatening the two, and he starts saying he has nothing to do with it. But when he realizes that his action figure is missing, and hears the gangsters talking about that limited edition doll, that already makes John extremely furious. And he lands a kick on one of their faces. "Don't put your hands on my waifu, you trash!" The thugs start hitting our protagonist, and he realizes he's in trouble along with Sophie. So he uses a secret technique called Divine Chili Powder. He orders Sophie to close her eyes and starts throwing chili into the eyes of the delinquents. Chili ends up getting into Sophie's eyes too, because she hadn't closed them. So he needs to grab her hand and get her out of that dangerous alley. Right after that, he starts washing her eyes and the girl keeps crying, saying it burns a lot. He throws water on her face and tells her to dry off. And the girl keeps complaining, saying he's not gentle at all. He explains that she shouldn't get involved in the human world because they always cause trouble. She said that he also got involved in the human world by saving her, and the girl had put herself in danger to save that student who was being robbed. Our hero realizes that she has a good heart, but is still very naive. So he explains to her that there are 3 rules she must follow strictly. The first is to not do anything that won't bring benefits. The second is to put your own interests first. And the third is to not interfere in the human world. She said he interfered by saving her, and when he gets mad, she calls him a tsundere. She even says that when he needs help, he can count on her as a way of thanking him. And John just tells her to go home. The girl's hands were injured from the fight, and he had bought some bandages and hands them to her, telling her to take care of the wounds. She gets mad because she thought he was doing something shameless. Sophie thought those bandages were going to be put somewhere else, and said she saw that in the books he keeps under his bed. John said she's getting everything wrong and ends up holding her hand, showing how to use them. As soon as he puts the bandages on, she gets a little embarrassed and then apologizes. At night, before going to sleep, she asks him what basketball is. He doesn't know why she suddenly developed an interest in sports. Since Sophie didn't know anything about the human world, she wanted to learn from John, because she was going to take part in a basketball match at school and wanted to make friends with humans. John gives her some homework and books so she could watch and read. He says that's enough for her to learn to play basketball. He was messing with her and thought she wouldn't learn anything. However, the next morning he even goes to the school to watch her embarrass herself. They were placed in the human school to learn about people's culture, and even the secretary went there to watch the games, expecting to have a good laugh. Sophia had studied all night and was very focused on the match. Her new friends were cheering loudly to motivate her. She was trying to be cool, like in the anime she had watched during the night. The games were about to start, and the opponent from the other team was bragging, saying she would win easily. As soon as the match starts, Sophie steals the ball and makes a basket from the middle of the court. Everyone is shocked because she was really good, and only Sophie keeps scoring to multiple points. John doesn't understand how she got so good just by reading the book and watching anime. Then the secretary explains that Sophia is really good at things she finds interesting, and that's why she became a master at playing. For those who like sports anime, they already know exactly what reference this is making. The girl was feeling like she was in a basketball anime, and our hero gets mad because he wanted to see her embarrass herself. The score was 41-42, and with just one more basket, Sophie's team would be the winner. All the opponents surround Sophie to keep her from making the final point. So, our little redhead throws the ball up to do the final attack she had seen in the anime John gave her. She imagines it would be a mega ultra powerful special move, but the ball lands 2 meters away and she hurts her hand. She starts screaming, and no one there was understanding what was going on. Our hero, deep down, is laughing. Think of a shameless guy. John is the worst. The supervisor, or secretary, she's called something different every time, goes over to see Sophie's poor hand. She had seen in a basketball anime that this move was very powerful, and would guarantee the 3 points for the win. However, the inspector says that magical powers in sports only exist in anime, and don't work in the real world. Sophia is already shocked because she had believed the tips John had given her. He told her the night before that when the situation got critical, she should use the Millennium Tiger move, and she would win the match. Shameless John is laughing in the background, making fun of her. He said he filmed everything, and it was really funny, her embarrassing herself in front of everyone. She said she's going to destroy him, and even I felt like doing that. What an annoying kid. Sophia's friends go over there and say she did really well, but she keeps apologizing because she used a shameful move at the end and wasted the chance to turn the game around. Her friends say she doesn't need to apologize, since the other two didn't even touch the ball, and Sophie had to do everything. However, they laugh at Sophie's special attack, but tell her not to worry, there will be other matches. When they were heading to the locker room, she ends up slipping, and a guy catches her in the air so she wouldn't fall to the ground. We can already tell that this blondie is a flirt, and keeps hitting on Sophie, telling her to be careful. Her eyes go wide because she had never seen a guy as handsome as him. The secretary, or supervisor, keeps trying to make our hero jealous, saying there's a hot guy flirting with his wife. That's really what was happening, and his name was Jack. He was a third-year student and president of the basketball club. John said he doesn't care because he made an agreement with Sophie that neither would interfere in the other's life. However, the purpose of the marriage contract was to make the two fall in love, and if he doesn't get jealous, the company's plan will fail. The guy acts all charming around the girls, and they all fall for him. No matter how much the supervisor tried to make John jealous, he didn't feel anything. She even starts saying he's a weird guy. The girls say their uniforms were all sweaty and they needed to take a shower and change clothes. However, there was a stalker recording them and they needed to be careful. Sophie didn't know about this stalker and didn't really understand what that meant. Then Jack says there are rumors that someone is recording videos of the female students and uploading them to the internet, and if she knows of any suspect, she should tell him immediately. He holds her arm and asks if the girl is hurt, because he saw the special move she tried to use. She says she's fine, but he wanted to take her to the infirmary. At that moment, all the girls fall in love, because they see a handsome guy flirting with their friend. The supervisor tells John that the handsome guy is taking his wife to the infirmary. However, our hero doesn't care much and doesn't want to interfere at all. At that moment, he receives a mission from the ring, saying he must carry his wife in his arms and take her to the infirmary. Otherwise, the ring will explode. Yeah, folks, our hero has to stop being a wimp and just be with the angel girl already. The supervisor even gives a wicked smile and already starts imagining the scene of him carrying his lovely wife in his arms. He didn't want to do it and even starts refusing with all his strength, but he had no other choice. And when she was going with Jack, he appears and grabs at her and in his arms by force, taking her toward the infirmary. He was masked, and she starts thinking he's the guy who was filming the girls. He whispers for her to stop pushing his face and says he's John. and that this is a mission given by the magic ring. He walks as fast as possible and finally reaches the infirmary. She doesn't quite understand what he's planning, and he says it was just a simple task. He asks why the ring hasn't completed the mission. With that, the ring gives another task, saying he needs to bandage the girl. He immediately starts looking for where she's hurt. John realizes that she twisted her ankle when she slipped. She starts feeling ticklish because he has his hand on her foot and tries to hold back from laughing out loud. After a while, he starts bandaging and says she shouldn't play basketball with the regular gym shoes. He's a real jerk, unbearable, and keeps saying it was really funny how she embarrassed herself, making her blush with shame. At that moment, he keeps teasing Sophie, saying she embarrassed herself in front of her friends and stuttered like a clumsy duck. She admits she's never had friends and was trying hard to get along with them because she never had friends and didn't want to spend this time in the human world alone. At that moment, he gets jealous and asks if she liked the handsome guy. She said no. After finishing the bandage, the ring says he completed the task, and Sophie keeps complaining in the background that he tied it too tight and that he's not gentle at all. After finishing the ring's tasks, he said he was leaving, but Sophie doesn't want to let him go without giving him a beating first, because he made her embarrassed in front of everyone. John keeps dodging all the attacks and says she can have fun with Jack and that he doesn't care if she hangs out with another guy. John here is one of those clueless pushovers. Seriously, what a useless guy. Tell us in the comments if you'd act like him if you were married to a red-headed angel. However, before leaving, he told her to stay away from Jack because he wasn't a good person. She doesn't understand what he means by that. After he leaves, Sophia is confused about which way the locker room is, since she's terrible with directions. She hears a female voice behind her saying the locker room is down the hallway to the left. That was the school nurse, and she had seen the whole conversation between John and Sophie. They hadn't noticed her since they were too caught up in each other. The nurse said that young people these days are very funny, but Sophia runs away in embarrassment and slams the door, not knowing where to hide her face, saying, "That was super awkward." Our protagonist was all excited on the court, watching the launch of new action figures. He was dying to buy the limited editions, but the expenses this month were really high, and he'd have to save a lot. He's a little worried about Sophie, but assumes she'll be able to handle herself. We see that she ended up in a completely different place. Actually, she ended up in the photography club and was interrupting their filming. We then see who the pervert was that had been photographing the girls in the locker room. These guys were total creeps and were placing hidden cameras to film the poor girls. They only got access to the locker room because the president of the basketball club had the keys. And we see that our hero was right to say that this smug blondie was suspicious. He keeps saying that he's going to upload the videos they recorded online and make a lot of money, since it's getting a lot of likes. He even tells his friends that when the girls find out it's him, they're going to make really funny faces, and it'll be fun to watch. Sophie was still lost, and had already tried every possible route. She sees a sign that says locker room, and ends up going in, happy that she finally found the place where her friends were. When she walks in, the girl ends up finding those creeps setting up the filming. They get really startled because they didn't know the door was open. So, Sophia had caught the boys red-handed. But since she was pretty innocent, she hadn't realized what was happening yet. When it finally clicks, the girl asks if they are the criminals who've been filming the girls. The blondie already starts thinking of an excuse, and doesn't understand why the cutie is in the locker room at that hour. He has the brilliant idea of making up an excuse, saying they came to investigate the culprits, but those two idiots end up letting it slip that they were caught. And so, Sophie realizes that they are the criminals. The blondie keeps telling his friends to shut the door and that they can't let her escape. As soon as they lock it, they rush toward her to try to stop the girl from fleeing. But since Sophia is really powerful, she lands a cat-tight strike on the pervert, knocking him to the ground. The other accomplice also tries to hit her, but she dodges and lands a kick right to the guy's chin. In just a few seconds, she had already defeated two of them and moves on toward Jack. He shows his phone and says that if she tries to hit him, he'll post a video of her. But the girl smashes the phone with a strike and destroys it. When she was about to deliver the finishing blow, he says to wait, that he's going to explain everything. Sophia's friends were worried about her since she was running late. They even start imagining that she's hooking up with Jack since she's really pretty and he was interested in her. A few minutes later, she finally shows up and apologizes for the delay. Those two creeps start whining, saying Sophie was way too strong. Jack said they were idiots, and that he had to come up with a crazy story so she would let them escape. The next day, John is talking with Sophie, and asks if she knows how to greet her friends. She gives a slightly suspicious look because she already knew he liked to prank her. He says he's going to teach her a really cool way to greet people, and the girl gets really curious. He ends up making a not-so-nice gesture, since he was a demon and always wished harm on people. Poor Sophie. She's very innocent, and has no idea that the gesture is actually something quite rude. He says it's something really friendly, and a sign that all friends do to each other, and it means you really like them. He even says she needs to do it in a very expressive way, because that would show she's a good friend. Sophie, she's not dumb at all, and it gets suspicious, thinking something might be off about that. However, she ends up convinced and shows that gesture, asking if that's how friends greet each other. John says she did it very weakly and that she needs to act with more enthusiasm, otherwise her friends will think she's rude. So, after a lot of training, she shows that obscene gesture, thinking she's being super friendly and even makes a very expressive face. Who would need a husband like this, right guys? Seriously, what a useless guy. He says she's getting the hang of it and that's exactly how she should do it. Right after that, Sophie says she's going to practice a bit with her friends and leaves humming. Since she was very innocent, a while later the secretary, the angel who managed their marriage, says everything is very calm, and she even gets worried. When she decides to check what's going on, she sees John running away from Sophie, and she's very angry, chasing after him. It probably turned into a big mess thanks to that wicked gesture he taught her. Some time passes, and later on, he's there preparing a very delicious cake. It was a fruit cake with lots of whipped cream, and just the look of it was already mouth-watering. He gets excited, since he was a great cook, and even grabs his phone to take some photos and post on Instagram. He asks Sophie if she wants to try a little bit of the cake, since it's fresh and just came out of the oven. He then realizes that idiot Sophie, as he says, hadn't come home yet, and he already starts to get worried, but he couldn't admit that he cared about her. At that moment, he remembers there was a promotion at the supermarket and he missed the chance to get some discounts. He also forgot to pick her up from school since the girl was very forgetful and didn't know how to get back home on her own. So he quickly puts on his coat and starts calling her, asking where she is and saying he's going there to get her. But just then, she shows up at the door, very downcast. She was really sad, and he didn't know exactly what had happened. John realizes Sophie is right in front of him, but he doesn't know how to react. The girl simply walks past him and he's left not understanding what's going on. Like I mentioned, guys, John couldn't admit he was worried about his wife. So he just stands there observing without saying anything. The guy was super curious but couldn't ask, so he keeps staring. Later, Sophie was having dinner and still looked really down. Curiosity was almost killing John. He tries to play it cool by eating his food, saying nothing, and ends up sighing, saying the food is delicious. She doesn't respond, and he thinks she's mad at him because he forgot to pick her up. His indecision seems really big, and he doesn't know if he should ask what's going on or just pretend nothing happened. The girl always seemed really happy during meals, but this time she looked a little sad and wasn't even really touching her food. He thought he had seriously messed up. Actually, guys, she was a little down because of what happened at school with that smug blondie. But John didn't know that and thought it was all his fault. So he thinks of some alternatives to talk to the girl and imagines in his head telling her that she could say everything that was bothering her because he was her no-dad. In the second option, he'd tell her it's better to let it all out because it's not good to keep things bottled up. In the third option, he'd say something really mean, saying she pulled a disappearing act and that's why she was all pouty and that she couldn't think that she was the last cookie in the jar for him to be picking her up at school. However, he knew that all those options would be really embarrassing if she wasn't mad at him, and if that were the case, she could very well be upset about something else. In that case, he wouldn't be anyone important, capable of causing concern in Sophie. So he simply says there's something different on her face and asks if she ended up tripping and falling on the ground. He says it in a very mean way, as if he were teasing the girl. However, she just ignores him, and he feels very awkward about it. The embarrassment was so big he didn't know where to hide his face. Right after, he starts to play it cool, eating his little rice very quietly. Then he gets angry and starts yelling at Sophie, asking why she was ignoring him and saying that in the end he looked like a fool. Sophie apologizes and says she didn't hear him say anything. She even regrets it, saying she didn't mean to be mean. The girl's realization finally hits, and she notices John was yelling at her. Then she starts yelling back at him, saying that he scared her. They stop fighting and John asks what happened and why she had that terrible look on her face. Sophie says it has nothing to do with him and John gets all sad, because it's what he feared the most. He thinks about what happened to her yesterday afternoon because she was acting very strange in the infirmary. However, something really dangerous could have happened when she went to the locker room, because from that moment she started acting that way. He asks if that smug blonde guy ended up doing something that made her sad, and she already gets all tense. That was exactly it. He said his gut feeling was right, and she starts trembling nervously. He warns that he told her to stay away from that guy, and even so, she thought he was a nice guy and kept talking to him. And now there she was, looking like a sad puppy. Our hero, who's quite wicked, starts scolding her, saying that it's her fault for trusting that scumbag. He guesses she probably caught him in the act and starts laughing out loud. because he already suspected that smug blonde guy was the one taking pictures of the girls in the locker room. That leaves Sophie all embarrassed, and her cheeks turn red, because she was feeling guilty and also really ashamed. She asks how he knew that the president was responsible for the secret recordings, and gets really surprised, since she didn't imagine that this demon was so sharp. He says that a demon has a nose for wicked things, and sensed the evil in that blonde guy from far away. As soon as he saw him, he already knew that guy wasn't worth the clothes he was wearing. Sophia asks why he didn't tell her, if he already knew all that. He says he has no obligation to tell anything since he's not a cop. Besides, he did try to warn her, but she didn't listen. He also says that as long as these conflicts involve only humans, there's no need for him to get involved, and he even starts mocking her, saying she let herself be fooled by mere humans, even though she's an extremely powerful angel. John is so shocked by the wickedness of human beings that he even guesses that probably the blonde guy managed to threaten her with a photo of one of her friends, and that this trick is really old, and she probably ended up accepting the threats and felt cornered. Clenching her fingers, she asks John if he knows any way to stop that scumbag and prevent him from taking more photos of the girls inside the locker room. He says he has no plan at all and doesn't care either. The guy is a real wicked scumbag. He doesn't care about anyone, just about himself. He even advises Sophia not to get involved with that kind of person, since she would be just a simple girl fighting against the most popular guy in school. However, if she kept trying to incriminate him, she could end up being incriminated in his place because he was very influential. He was the student council president, and people would trust that guy, who was popular more than her, who was a new student, freshly transferred. She could very well be labeled as a vindictive girl, and that scumbag could tell people that he turned her down. As a form of punishment and trying to get revenge, she ended up spreading those false rumors about him. John says that when she caught him at the scene of the crime, there were many ways to prove that her words were true. However, she couldn't gather enough evidence and ended up letting the proof slip through her fingers. She could have made a secret recording of him or done something to get the attention of the teachers and classmates, but she let all those chances go, and now it would be basically impossible to prove that he was the scumbag taking the photos. She let a perfect opportunity slip away. If she were smart, she would have been able to gather convincing evidence. And he keeps saying that in a mocking tone to make her feel bad. The girl gets really worried because she won't be able to prove that the guy was the scumbag, and her friends could be in danger. He opens the fridge to grab something to eat and keeps saying that the story she told is actually interesting. However, Sophia was really worried and ends up grabbing John's shirt. She asks if there wasn't another option and if he didn't have any idea in mind to help her protect her friends. In response, John says that she was breaking one of the agreements they had made. They had agreed that neither would interfere in the other's personal life, and therefore he couldn't help her in this situation. I confess to you all that John is really annoying here. He keeps saying that she's useless, can't do anything on her own, and only asks for help when she realizes she won't be able to handle things. He ends up grabbing some ice and placing it on the girl's cheek, saying it will get better, since her face was swollen because she had cried earlier. He even asks if she can't just pretend she didn't see anything and try to enjoy the human world, because if she kept acting like a good Samaritan, she wouldn't be able to enjoy things very well. But the girl lies down on the bed and keeps thinking about that. She wonders if she should really pretend she didn't see anything and take care of her own life. However, she was too kind and couldn't just ignore the fact that scumbags were taking pictures of her friends in the locker room. She even thinks of a few alternatives to incriminate those guys, but since she was an innocent little angel, she can't come up with anything. Inside the classroom, she keeps remembering the moment she saw that scene. She was really angry and asked what those photos were. The blonde scumbag said they were photos of her friends, and that if she complained about anything, he would post them on the internet. She got really angry hearing that, but since she was very innocent, she didn't really know how to react. The guy keeps threatening, saying what people would think when they saw the photos of her friends on the internet. People would go after them, saying they were all shameless, and in the end, Sophie would be the one blamed. In a very devilish way, he gets close to her ear and says that if that happened, the full responsibility would be hers, because she was a meddler and ended up arriving at the locker room at the wrong time. At that moment, he proposed a deal. She would stay quiet and he wouldn't post the photos anywhere. She asked if he would keep his word, and he agreed, saying yes. Now we return to the present, where she was thinking about that moment and the deal she made, but she wasn't really believing in the words of that shameless blonde guy. The teacher had called her name, and she ended up getting startled. She lets out a loud shout saying that she's present, and everyone there starts laughing at her. The teacher says she didn't need to yell, and everyone there keeps laughing. The angel's secretary notices that something is off with Sophie and gets worried. Later, they're walking around the square, and the secretary asks the girl what happened for her to be so spaced out like that. She was drinking juice and didn't want to say much about what was bothering her, so she pretends it's nothing. However, the secretary friend knew Sophie very well and starts pulling her cheeks, saying there's something wrong, because she wouldn't act like that normally, since she was usually a cheerful goofball. Sophie ends up telling the supervisor that nothing happened, but the woman isn't convinced and keeps pulling her cheeks. She remembers John's words, who had said the night before that she was very immature and didn't see the right opportunities at the moment they should be seen, and all of that because she was an innocent little angel. Because of that, the girl starts blaming herself, thinking like everything was her fault. Sophia ends up pushing the supervisor, but getting out of her cheek pinch. She says she's feeling fine and that she's just a little tired and didn't need to be treated like a big baby. She says that to the supervisor, who is pulling her cheeks. The girl says goodbye, saying she has something important she needs to do. She runs off, saying that this time she will solve the problem on her own and won't depend on others. She was motivated to solve the locker room problem because she couldn't let her friends keep being exposed like that. The group of scumbags was up on the school roof, and they asked the leader if it was okay to let the girl go. The shameless blonde guy says not to worry about that girl because she was very shy and cowardly and posed no threat to them. In a very wicked way, he says that it had been a long time since he had found such a fascinating prey. And you can already imagine that this guy is going to get what he deserves, right guys? So keep watching. The scene switches to our hero playing video games, and it looked like he was doing badly on the levels. He lies on the floor saying he's going to ask for a refund for that game since it was very hard and he couldn't pass the level. At that moment he remembers Sophie, who is a little sad, but he couldn't admit that he was worrying about her, so he keeps convincing himself that it's no big deal. He knew he had been too harsh with her, and probably now the girl was even sadder. And all of that was thanks to the mean things he said. The guy was a demon, but now he was feeling guilty for making the little angel cry. You see how our hero here is starting to change the way he thinks, guys? So he's even sweating cold, imagining that he's not being a good enough husband. Before he knows it, a rope ends up appearing around his foot, and very suddenly someone pulls that rope. It was the supervisor setting a trap for our hero, and she wanted to know what the hell had happened with Sophie. He keeps yelling for that crazy old lady to get him down from there, but all the supervisor wanted to know was why Sophie was sad, but he didn't want to talk at all. So she squeezes his cheeks and says he better talk fast, because if he didn't, he would be doomed. She says that if he doesn't say it right away, she'll ban him from the human world and also give him a punishment that he'll never forget. With a threat like that, I doubt he wouldn't talk, since our hero is a stinky otaku and can't stay away from the human world. The group of scumbags was walking down the hallway. In the back, we see that Sophie was following those guys and trying to gather clues. She knew they were up to something, so she starts following them sneakily. After a few turns, she ends up getting lost, since she was really bad with directions. However, she vaguely remembered that place and even says that's where the girls' locker room is. She ends up seeing a little sign that says boys' locker room. So, she knew that right past that door would be the girls' locker room. She opens the door, very anxious, not knowing what she would find on the other side. The door was unlocked, so she starts getting out even more suspicious. The place was very dark, which increased her suspicions by 55,000%. She knew she couldn't make mistakes now, so she was ready to gather evidence. Meanwhile, outside the school, our hero was still being kept tied up in a tree. The supervisor wanted to know by any means what had happened with Sophie. Our hero keeps telling her to let him down from there, that he wasn't feeling well. She goes back to questioning him, telling him to spit it out and tell everything. He tells her to ask Sophie about that. That ends up making the supervisor even angrier, who says that Sophie ran off when she tried to ask her why the girl was so sad. He keeps refusing to talk, and the woman gets really furious, saying she's going to ban him from the human world. That's enough for him to end up telling everything. He says that Sophie ended up getting involved in a mess. She tried to be nice, but it backfired, and that's why she was like that. And if by chance the supervisor wanted to help the girl, she should go after her now, instead of bothering our hero. On the other hand, Sophie kept looking for clues, and her goal was to find that secret camera. She keeps checking all the lockers, doing it one by one, in an attempt to find something suspicious. After a few minutes, she even starts to think she entered the wrong locker room and gets pretty discouraged because her search to find evidence wasn't working. After a few seconds, she ends up finding a key. On the key, it was written Sports Club Key. She even wonders why that locker room key was lying there in the middle of the bathroom and finds that very strange. The key was very close to an open outlet box, and that was very suspicious. She imagines that there might be something on the other side, since there were some exposed wires. She ends up dismantling the box and realizes there's a device inside. That was basically what she needed. She gets happy because she had found a hidden camera, and that was exactly what she needed. So, the girl gets very cheerful, but someone had arrived. She hears the sound of someone opening the door. It was precisely those shameless boys, and they had a phone filming her, so the girl were doing something wrong. She doesn't understand anything, and they keep accusing the girl of having placed a camera in the boys' locker room. It seems that now the scene had flipped and she had fallen into a trap, because the guys had planned this whole situation. Poor Sophie stands there, not understanding anything, and the blonde boy keeps saying that she is shameless, and that she was even holding the locker room key in her hand, which meant that she was also placing cameras and taking pictures of the girls in the female locker room. She realizes that she really was holding the key, and that was a trap that she had fallen into. She gets scared because she realized that the evil of those boys was far worse than the evil of that demon she had married. She even says that she's disgusted by them, because she never imagined that there could be beings so repulsive like that. Yeah, Sophie, humans are way worse than you can imagine. The blonde boy keeps saying that he doesn't understand anything she's saying, acting like a cynic, pretending that he's totally innocent. She runs and grabs the phone from his hand. She says she's going to delete all those pictures he had taken. When he tries to grab the phone from her hand, she dodges and pushes him against the wall, saying she won't let him get away with it. The boy then starts laughing, saying he made a backup in another storage, and in case she hurts him, he's going to post those photos in the school groups. He says it's too late for her to do anything, and that he had already orchestrated everything. There was no way she could come out on top in this story. She calls him an idiot and threatens to beat him up. At that moment, he plays the victim and pretends he's being threatened by the girl, as if she had been rejected by him after confessing her feelings. Now she was turning to threats. The lunatic was doing exactly what John had said he would do, and that shows that the demon really knows how humans are. She even starts pulling at her shirt, since she was quite shaken. She couldn't understand how he could act so innocent when he was guilty of a terrible crime. He was even worse than a demon. In Sophia's mind, she imagined that humans were half angels and half demons, so she couldn't believe that a simple human, just any boy, could be worse than a terrible monster. That's why she runs out of the locker room. The poor girl didn't imagine to think she'd find humans like that. Those shameless boys keep mocking her, saying she's really naive. They had filmed everything and keep saying that now she won't be able to tell anyone. The shameless blonde boy even says they caught a guilty one red-handed. She ends up getting angry and resorts to physical force to try to destroy the evidence. As that doesn't work, she flees the crime scene in panic. That would be the story he would tell, and he even says that it's really fun. She runs past while the supervisor was there, hanging our hero. The woman asks the girl where she's going, but Sophie doesn't say anything and just leaves. The supervisor turns to John and asks what he meant when he said the boys had taken advantage of her. But John had already escaped, and was no longer hanging upside down. A little later that same day, our hero realized the weather was closing in, and it looked like a storm was about to start. That's why he ran back to his house, since he had clothes on the line. The clothes in question were exclusive items from an anime store, and he got those shirts after a long waiting list. So he couldn't let those shirts get wet with rainwater. The guy doesn't even smell bad, guys. I doubt you have more anime shirts than this guy here. He even starts cursing the supervisor, saying he had almost got late because of her. Then it starts to rain, and he gets a little worried since Sophie hadn't arrived yet. As always, he has to pretend he's not worried about her and keeps saying that what he's really worried about is her catching a cold, and that he has to take care of the girl. He remembers when he saw her walking past him, and the girl didn't seem happy at all. By the way, that wasn't the first time he saw the girl making that expression. That's why he starts to get a little anxious, and questions where that girl went. Then he grabs his phone and starts calling her. Sophia's name is saved as Stupid Angel, and he keeps saying she's a real idiot. Again, guys, he can't admit that he's worried about her. So he starts cursing himself. The rain starts getting even heavier, and several lightning bolts begin to strike. His worry starts turning into stress, and he begins cursing the girl in his mind. He puts on his super stylish sneakers, saying he's going after the girl. He even grabs a pink umbrella to give her and goes out looking for the girl, cursing. He says she's problematic and too emotional, and that probably that shameless blonde guy ended up saying something to her, which made her even sadder than she already was. So he goes walking through the neighborhood looking for the girl, since he figured she might be lost. He was already pretty close to the school and still hadn't found her. He passes by some girls who were coming back from school, but didn't find any clue about her. Since John wasn't finding Sophie, he asked two little girls if they had seen a girl with pink hair passing by, and the little girl said no. As a last option, he decided to call the supervisor and ask if she had any news about Sophie. Since the supervisor didn't know anything either, John starts showing excessive concern, and even starts sweating there, under the rain. Finally, after almost 2 hours of searching, he decides to go back to the apartment. When he gets there, he has a pretty surprising view. The girl was lying in the hallway. Poor Sophie was soaked, and the whole place where she was lying was drenched in water. He gets a little angry and even gets ready to give her a scolding. Our hero asks the girl what the hell had happened and says she made a mess. He suggests that the boys had exploited her again, and that's why she came home all beaten up. I have to admit to you guys that he's pretty mean here and keeps filling her head saying a bunch of things, making the girl even sadder. She starts squeezing her own arms, showing that she's very insecure and also that she was getting more stressed out since he wouldn't stop talking. He opens the door to leave and even says that angels are idealists and that they live in a daydream. She even starts gritting her teeth, really furious. Right after that, she tells him to shut up and punches our hero in the arm. She jumps on him, knocking the boy to the ground and keeps yelling, telling him to be quiet and stop saying nonsense. We know she's really powerful and starts throwing several strong punches at his face. Our hero does nothing, he just stays there on the ground getting beaten. John asks her not to overdo it. Meanwhile, the girl was crying a lot. Sad. He didn't imagine that she was feeling so hurt, and if he knew that the girl was that depressed, he wouldn't have said such harsh words. He says sorry, apologizing, and says that if it makes her feel better, he doesn't mind getting beaten. The girl gets a little shocked. His face was bruised and he was also a bit wet. Right after that, he turns to her and asks if she feels better now. The girl's hands were trembling and she apologizes, saying it wasn't her intention. Poor Sophie opens her mouth to cry, saying that she didn't want to hurt John. She even says she's a bad girl and right after that runs away from there. She locks herself in her room and tells him not to come in. Besides being upset, she was also a little embarrassed about what she ended up doing and collapses on the floor, saying that she's doing a bunch of stupid things, and that it would have been better if she hadn't come to the human world. She cries a lot, saying that she's the worst angel that exists. After lying there on the cold floor, she keeps saying that she wishes she could disappear and that the world would be much better without her. However, our hero stays there on the other side of the hallway, not really knowing what had happened. He was very worried. Guys, you know he already likes her, but he couldn't admit it, and stays there on the other side grumbling. It was already getting dark and the rain wouldn't stop falling. He sent a message to the supervisor explaining that he found her when he arrived at the apartment and she was all wet. The supervisor was also looking for Sophie and ends up scolding them, saying those boys made her worried. A few hours later, he had already dried up the entire living room that was soaked with water and had to put a bandage on his forehead, since he got hurt from the punches the girl had thrown at him. He looks at the bedroom and she was still locked in there on the other side. He wanted to know how she was doing, but guys, he couldn't show that he was worried, so he keeps grumbling as usual. At that moment, I felt like jumping into this story and giving John a few flicks so he'd stop being such a pain. It was already 11 o'clock at night and he had already made dinner, but the girl hadn't left the room to eat. He even found it strange since she was always hungry and hadn't even cared about dinner. He couldn't stop thinking about the face she made when she was crying and apologizing. The poor guy even starts to feel a little guilty, since all of that happened because of him. He didn't give her very good advice and let her go through that whole situation alone. To help you understand, guys, he was a demon, so he thought that if he acted mercifully and showed affection toward the angel, he would be a bad demon. He even says he has a headache and that he doesn't care about her, but that was a lie. At that moment, the ring dick starts beeping really loudly, screaming that there was danger. He didn't know what danger it was, and tries to understand why the ring was beeping. He wonders if it's something Sophie is doing, so he already starts getting worried. He points his hand toward the room and the danger starts screaming louder. Now he already knows it has something to do with her. He points at the room and the ring starts beeping even louder. He thinks it's best to go there to see what's happening. John knocks on the door and asks what she's doing, but Sophie doesn't respond. He decides to open the door and realizes it was unlocked the whole time. She clearly had left the door open so he would go after her. But that idiot, our hero, didn't do that. He asks if he can come in, but he's already walking in. Typical weekend visitor behavior. There on the cold floor of the room was Sophie, all sprawled out. He asks what's going on and why she lay there even though she was wet. She hadn't answered, so he decides to touch her to see if she was still alive. However, the girl was burning with fever, and that's why the ring was beeping, saying danger. He knows it's way too dangerous to leave her in that condition, so he'd have to take care of her. He even said it would be a miracle if she didn't catch a cold after lying on the cold floor and being soaked like that. He tries to wake the girl, telling her to at least change her clothes, but she was too weak and couldn't even move from there. So he says he'll have to take off her soaked clothes. The shameless guy who's a stinky otaku already starts freaking out about touching his wife. He even starts sweating cold, trying to come up with some excuse not to do it. However, he needed to take off her clothes, otherwise she'd get even sicker. That's why he decides to think about 2D characters, since that would make him a bit calmer. And that's exactly what he does. He starts imagining his cute waifus. And this guy here is pretty shameless, guys. So little by little, he starts completing his mission. And it wasn't very easy, but he's a brave hero and keeps steady on his journey. Even the challenge of the Valley of Grim Shadows he manages to complete. Finally, he ends up taking off her tights since they were very wet. He looks at his wife and his little heart starts beating faster. Comment here for us if you'd fall in love with a waifu like this. I'm sure you wouldn't be able to resist. He even makes that pathetic face of a shameless character. And in the end, he's not strong enough and ends up taking a peek. He managed to complete the mission and puts dry clothes on his wife. However, she had a high fever. He was also sweating cold, wondering what kind of medicine he should give her. So he decides to get a bucket with cold water and place a towel, all of that to bring Sophie's fever down. After accomplishing all those feats, our hero's nose starts to bleed, and you all already know very well why that happens. After a while, Sophia ends up waking up. He explains that she got sick and ended up sleeping on the floor, and he had prepared some medicine for her. However, when she hears the word medicine, her mood suddenly changes. He insists that she drink it right away, but she ends up getting a little furious, let's say. And right after that, John is thrown far away from the room. She was really furious, guys, and it looked like a monster had awakened inside the little angel. He even starts to wonder what had just happened. However, our big girl there was out of control and kept repeating the word medicine. So he decides to call the supervisor and explain what happened. She explains that the girl can't hear the word medicine. All of that was because of a trauma she had when she was a child, when she had to take medicine and the taste was really bad. From that point on, Sophie would go wild whenever she heard the word medicine. And to break that curse, she needed to take the medicine once and for all to return to normal. I bet if you found a creature like that in your house, you'd kick it instantly. He couldn't imagine that the cute and shy girl could turn into a monster like that. Way worse than a demon. That ring had the power to make the person feel a little, let's say, enthusiastic when they got violent. However, it wasn't working because she wasn't in her right mind. And the supervisor says very cheerfully that it's going to be interesting what happens from now on, and that he needs to figure it out and try to give her the medicine. He gets angry, asking why she was talking so happily like that. And meanwhile, Sophia was trying to end our hero's life. A very bright golden halo appears on Sophia's head. He gets a little scared. She was scarier than the Demon King. And our hero asks the supervisor if that was normal to happen. The supervisor says it's rare, but it happens a lot, and that he needed to be careful because that halo is very powerful. He should stay alert, because that halo had the power to transform into anything, depending on what the angel desired. So Sophie starts transmuting that halo and creates a very sharp knife. Right after that, she throws the knife at our hero. Poor John manages to dodge at the last second, and he was almost split in half. The halo ends up curving and passes really close to him again, but our hero managed to dodge. He even starts to mock, saying he thought that attack would be more powerful. But what he didn't expect was that the halo was aiming at his little figure. He starts sweating cold, and the figure is hit, splitting in two. The boy couldn't imagine that could happen and starts crying a lot. Finally, Sophie puts the halo back on her head, like an innocent little angel. He asks if, by chance, she knows how long he waited in line to be able to buy that figure. Now he was more motivated than ever to rescue his wife's sanity, and he ends up drinking that medicine right there. He says he's going to spit it into her mouth. Right after that, he starts getting ready to carry out his mission. The girl tries to land a taekwondo kick on our protagonist, but he manages to dodge. He was really close to compromising areas, and after grabbing her arm, he managed to pull a move, throwing her to the ground. It was a move he had watched in an anime, but luckily it worked. Right after that, he managed to immobilize the girl. She hits him in the nether regions and he swears a lot. However, it was now or never. He performs his secret move, medicine spit, and so he manages to give a very romantic kiss, let's say, to his wife, and transfers all the medicine to her. Little by little, Sophie starts returning to normal. And that scene right there is actually quite romantic, guys. I wasn't expecting that scene. She even gives a little shake. He says the medicine was very bitter, and asks if she took all of it. Sophia had fainted, since she was now returning to normal. Right after that, he puts the girl on the bed so she can rest. He was very tired and bruised, since he had taken a beating. Looking at the girl, he realizes that she also wasn't doing very well. Besides being tired, she was still crying and probably having nightmares. So he doesn't leave her side for even a second and spends the whole night there next to Sophie. He was worried if she still had a fever and extends his hand to check the girl's temperature. He touches her nose, saying that she is very cute. And little by little, he was already admitting that he likes her, guys. He said that even while sleeping, she was pretty dumb. And he says that in an affectionate way, guys. He even admits that she's very pretty. And when he was about to get up to leave early the next day, she ends up grabbing his shirt. He tries to free himself from the girl, but she kept holding on to him. John asks what she's doing. Even if he used all his strength to try to get away from her, she kept holding on tight. She was very strong. He couldn't get her to let go of his shirt sleeve. So he starts yelling, asking what the hell she wants. She keeps repeating, telling him it's not to go to leave. That makes the boy feel a bit regretful, since he treated her badly again. And he needed to control himself to not be so harsh with her. In a romantic way, Sophia ends up holding the hand of our hero. Right after that, she asks him to bring breakfast. What was supposed to be a romantic scene ended up becoming a very funny one, and he was very disappointed. She kept asking for several things for him to bring forward to eat. Meanwhile, he shouts, saying she is very opportunistic. And to end with a golden key, she ends up holding his hand and biting his finger, making our hero let out a loud scream. Thus we finish the first part of this manhwa Angels and Demons. If you want me to bring part 2, leave a comment for us, guys. When you leave a comment on the video, YouTube recommends it to more people. I'm also going to leave here a video recommendation that's really good. I'm sure you're going to like it. But that's it. Thanks and see you later, folks.